My name's Larry Carlton. I was born in Torrance, California, the United States. And my parents are from southeastern Oklahoma, so I'm the son of Okies. My mother played the acoustic guitar when she was a teenager in Oklahoma, and her father played the fiddle. And they would play on the front porch or at the church or for the local dances. And my parents tell me that I was fascinated with the guitar at age 4, but I was too small to hold the instrument. So they told me, if you wait till you can hold it, then you can start taking guitar lessons. And at age 6½, I could hold the guitar, and I started taking guitar lessons, and I've played ever since. By the time I was 10 years old, rock and roll music was coming on the scene on the radio, and the guitar was very dominant in that sound. So I was learning solos at age 10 from Elvis Presley records, and there was a television show on every Saturday night called the Town Hall Party, and they had all famous country musicians on there. And I know I kind of idolized Joe Maphis, Jimmy Bryant, and at the time there was a young prodigy country guitar player named Larry Collins that was on this show every week. And I'm sure that the image of that kind of response they were getting playing their instruments impacted me. My mother would drive me to local talent shows. So I was getting the experience of being on stage. And out of doing those things and getting that experience, you meet other young musicians. And pretty soon I started getting called to play a local dance with a teenage band, but I was 12. All I can say is that for me, the guitar was fascinating, and I had what appears to be a great aptitude for it, which perpetuates that passion because it comes fairly easily with a lot of work. First was country music and rock and roll, but it wasn't until I was around 16 years old that I got turned on to B.B. King. My grandmother had one album, and I remember it was vinyl and it was red. The color was red, you know, and King of the Blues. And she gave that album to me, and I started listening to B.B. And during that time when I was playing at clubs, I would listen to B.B. before going to the club and then try to play like him. And at age 14, I got turned on to jazz. I heard Joe Pass on the radio. A great album that he was featured on by Gerald Wilson. It was the Gerald Wilson Big Band. The name of the album was Moment of Truth, featuring Joe Pass. I had never heard the guitar played like that in my life. Had to order the album. It took 2 weeks for it to come in. Well, when I was 16 years old, I wanted more of what I had heard Joe do, so I called him on the phone. And I had heard through the grapevine that he gave private lessons sometimes at his home. So I called him and he said, "Sure, kid, come on up on a certain day." Well, the morning that I was supposed to go take my first lesson from Joe Pass, my car wouldn't start. I was 16 years old, the battery's dead. So all this panic is going on. But anyway, the car started. I drove to Santa Monica, and my first face-to-face encounter with Joe Pass was, I knock on the door, guitar in hand, excited. He opens the door, he's on his knees on the carpet, and he looks up and he says, "Oh, hi Larry, come on in, I've lost my pick." And he was on the floor, my hero, trying to find his pick. One of the nicest men I've ever met. So we spent a couple of hours together that day, and I went home very humbled because I had thought I had attained a level that I had not really attained, and Joe exposed that by sharing with me some things. So I went back 2 years later to see Joe when I had grown more, and then I could take in more of his knowledge and try to apply it. It takes a lot of events to finally become part of a music scene. Constantly working in nightclubs, word of mouth, I think, started to spread that there's a young player in Torrance that's pretty good. So I got a call, started getting calls to play on little demo sessions. Well, I cut those dates very well, played good for them. Same people would call back, and pretty soon I was the arranger and the guitar player of the demo sessions. But other musicians on those demo sessions were a little older than me, so they had a different network of musicians that they worked. So they started recommending me for that. Those people started recommending me for this, and pretty soon I was doing a lot of demo sessions. A lot of the predecessors to me that were in the studios either could read very well and not play rock and roll or pop music, or they were rock and rollers who could not read music. So I was one of the first to be able to do both. Early in 1971, I was on a session for the English pop singer Donovan, the folk singer. And I had just been called for a session. I showed up, had my amp and my guitar, and while I was plugging in, Joe Sample walked in the studio. He had also been called for this particular session. So while I was tuning up, Joe started playing the acoustic piano. Well, I joined in with him, just started jamming along with Joe, and we kind of connected. Well, we finished that session. That was a Friday evening. I never forgot that. Monday morning, my phone rang, and it was the Crusaders' office, and said, could you come and record for the next 2 weeks with the Crusaders? They were already in the studio recording an album, and I was available to do it. And that's how the Crusader I album and my relationship with the Crusaders started. When I was playing in 1974 at a local club in North Hollywood with Tom Scott, it was called the LA Express. We had not recorded, we were just jamming, having fun every Tuesday night. Joni Mitchell heard that band. It was Max Bennett on bass, John Guerin on drums, Joe Sample on piano, Tom Scott on sax, and me on guitar. And she came in and heard this band playing and said, I'd like to go in the studio with you guys and just see what happens. Well, what happened was great music. That was the Court and Spark album, which was Joni's first gold album with a rhythm section. First time she had ever recorded with a rhythm section. Consequently, it was one of the highlights of my career because she stood out so much, but her music was very sophisticated, but we made it very pop. In the 80s, I had a home in the Hollywood Hills, and that's where my recording studio was. And so I went downstairs to the office, and I was going to write an arrangement for the evening session. And the door to this office was open, which led to the outside. And there's a window, so I could see these two young boys and a German Shepherd dog looked like they were jogging through the hills, you know, along the pavement and in front of my house. Well, the dog came under the carport. I thought it might come in my house, so I went to the door to close it and say, hi guys, I'll close it. Well, when I said, hi guys, one of these children, 14, 15 years old, pulled out a pistol and shot me in the throat, and then they ran off. Well, my secretary was in that little office at the time. Obviously, we shut the door. They didn't try to come in. I walked about 12, 15 feet. My arm went numb immediately. I thought I was shot in the arm, but it was in the throat. Anyway, they called the paramedics, took me to the hospital. I had a graft, you know, half-inch of my carotid artery was blown away by the bullet. I lost the use of my left arm for months. All the nerves that worked my left arm were traumatized. So they shut down. It just atrophied. I couldn't squeeze toothpaste. I carried it around like this. But through physical therapy and God's grace and a wonderful wife who supported me through this whole thing, those nerves regenerated and the strength started to come back. And 9 months after the shooting was in April of 1988, I was back on stage doing a comeback concert with my friends at the Universal Theater in Hollywood. When it's time for me to compose a song or songs for an album, honestly, it's not difficult. I'm an improviser. So I'm making up songs every time I play a solo. But you might be surprised to know that at least 75% of the songs that I write, I compose at the keyboard, not at the guitar. The sound of the chords and the voicings that I can find inspire me often more than the familiar sound and voicings of the guitar that I know. But I think the two things, the composing and being a very good improviser, go hand in hand because you need motif, you need reiteration, you need recapitulation, which is coming back to that familiar theme so that the listener is along for the ride. Often there's a comment that, Larry, your solos make so much sense that possibly it sounds like it's not improvised, although it is. I think the ability to do that comes from the kind of music I like to listen to all through my formative years. I liked songs with melody. So I learned songs. And if you go back and listen to Wes Montgomery, Joe Pass, their solos made sense. Somehow I was blessed with the ability to recognize that and absorb it and then incorporate it. So it's always flattering when people say, your solos don't sound like they're improvised, they make so much sense. That's a big compliment to me. A lifetime of music afforded me the outlet to expose such a deep passion that's in my heart and to expose it on a very, very consistent level. So every day that I'm playing the guitar, there's more fulfillment that has gone on in my life. If you're in love with your wife, you want to look at her face every day. So every day you get up and you go, God, she's beautiful. Every day that I've had the opportunity to make music has allowed me to experience the passion that I have for music. So I think one of my main objectives, and I realized this a long time ago, I would tell people, I want to be like Chet Atkins and B.B. King. They're gentlemen, and they want to play their guitars until they die. And those, I think, are my two aspirations, to be a gentleman and to be able to make music until I pass away.